Go ahead.
Good morning and welcome to Tuesdays on the Daily Huddle. I am sad to say that my co-host Catherine Sable is not going to be with us today, but she left me with this because she knows that I love beans. So there's your hint. Burke, let me ask you this morning, what is the best thing to eat during January?
Oh my gosh. I'm a person that when it gets cold, I can't wait to like dig into some good hearty soups.
You're
So,
close. You're close, but the answer is burritos.
okay. I
All
was
right,
not answering
that's
for the joke. I
golden.
was honestly just answering from my own opinion. I was not trying to guess the joke.
Oh my goodness. Good morning. Rolling the tape, which we can't hear for some reason this morning. There we go. Good morning. Good morning, Daily Huddle family, and welcome to Tuesdays on the Daily Huddle, where we talk everything communication and relationships. And we are passionate about this because we know that more effective communication makes better relationships, and better relationships makes better families, better communities, and better business. So we are fired up to talk to our guest today, a gentleman by the name of Burke Brown. And Catherine and I miss you today, Catherine. We have been leaning into a theme for January, and that is self-awareness. And when we leaned into that theme, there was no doubt in my mind who I wanted to bring on as our guest for this month, and that's Burke Brown. And I'm going to tell you why. I'm going to tell you an interesting little story. My daughter, my youngest daughter, she's 29. She dates off and on. And she's asked me this question several times over the past few years. She's like, Mom, do you really think that guys, I mean, dudes, are they really, am I going to find somebody who's into emotional intelligence and self-awareness? And Burke, I kid you not, I think about you and I say, damn right you will, baby. So
Oh,
Burke is taken.
Brooke is married. Yeah.
Yes, but you give us all hope, especially at such what I would consider a young age. So let me tell y'all a little bit about Burke, and then I am going to let him help us dive into the topic of self-awareness. And the question is the unexamined life not worth living? I love that. Burke Brown is an avid autodidact, so my people right there, and freelancer. Has extensive experience in content creation and development, writing, photography, video production and editing, graphic design, personal development, and leadership consulting. Whew. He has studied organizational psychology at Creighton University in Omaha and with the Stella Adler Conservatory in New York City. His experience as an actor and artist has lent valuable insights to his professional life, most notably a deep respect and understanding for the human condition. In 2020, Burke joined K Advanced Group as lead facilitator, graphic designer, and content creator. He is a leadership guide and holds certifications in the Giant 5 Voices and 100X training programs. He has created, authored, and designed leadership competency guides, inclusive leadership training programs, anticipatory service training programs, and collaboration workshops, just to name a few. Currently, Burke is designing a leadership development program for the entertainment industry. That sounds so exciting. Welcome, Burke, to the Daily Huddle.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
I'm so happy to have you. We did a little chat yesterday about how we wanted to take this conversation, especially in consideration of the short period of time.
Yeah.
But from the moment I met you, Burke invited me to help facilitate some of his workshops with K Advanced Group, and that's how we got to know each other. And we're presenting to these like really gruff, kind of military-minded audiences. And Burke had the strength and the confidence not to shy away from the work that he's done on knowing himself. So before we dive into that, Burke, I want you to give us a little bit of background about how you became so passionate about self-awareness at such a young stage in your life and career.
Yeah, absolutely. And first of all, you might hear my kitty in the background meowing. He just had his breakfast, so he should be fine. But yeah, you know, honestly, ever since I was honestly maybe in my early teens, it was something. I remember I had a book. I had a very old book that my grandmother had given my dad, called like 1,000 Quotations for All Occasions. It was just one of those old, like dusty old books that she had gotten at like a flea market or something like that. And I used to just lay in my room and just like read through all these quotations. And that was like really where my journey kind of started. But, over time, it's like, that journey of self-discovery or of awareness or of just becoming, right, is
Mhm.
not linear. And so we have moments where we touch in, but really where it kind of really took off for me was through, some turmoil, some pain, some difficult times. My father passed away when I was 25, and so at the time I was working at a restaurant. I was 25. It was a Friday at around 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and the last time I had talked to my dad was the previous Wednesday, so 2 days prior. And he had his own struggles with addiction and his own vices and things like that that ultimately um, he was never able to heal from completely. And so he'd called me on this Wednesday, and I was busy, and he was, bothering me about something that was just very insignificant in my mind at the time. And then he had sent me this sort of kind of guilt-laden text after that. So I was upset with him. So that was on a Wednesday. Well, the next day on a Thursday, I get a package from him in the mail. He was living in Florida. I was living in Nebraska. So it had been mailed even a few days prior to that. But I was so upset with him at the time that I didn't open the package. So Friday rolls around and I get a phone call from a number I didn't recognize, but an area code that I knew was down where he was in Fort Myers Beach, Florida. And I picked up the phone and they said, do you know William Brown? And I said, yes, I do. And they said, can I ask your relation? And I said, he's my father. And the man on the phone said, well, I'm Sergeant so and so, and I'm sorry to say that your dad's passed away. And so they'd found him, that his roommate had found him in his bed that morning. Um, and so that whole experience really ignited um my journey of awareness and self-discovery, because I also knew that I wanted to heal from the things that he didn't heal from, because I had a lot of those same things in me. So anyways, I'm driving home now because I leave the restaurant, and knowing that I had a letter and a package from my dad who had passed away that I hadn't opened yet. And
Wow.
I was driving, and I had this car at the time that had this like electrical malfunction, and the windshield wipers would randomly just start going. And this is February, it was February 5th in Omaha,
Mhm.
2012. I'm driving home. It's like probably like 10 degrees out, like it is right now. It's actually negative, and temperatures there right now. But anyways, I'm driving home. My windshield wipers are going off, and it's dry and cold out. So they're like, and I'm driving
Oh,
home, like this could not be happening to me for so many reasons. Everything that had just sort of, it was also, though, I'll have to say, one of those calls that I had sort of expected to happen at some point, So there was equal parts, like it was like a paradox, it was yes and it was so tragic, and I was so not knowing what to do next. But then there was just like this like silver lining of just like relief, too. Um, because I didn't have to worry about him anymore, and I knew that he was at peace finally.
mhm.
But anyways, so I'm driving home, windshield wipers are going off. I get home and I have this letter in front of me. And my dad was an incredible he was so charismatic. He always used to say he could sell a ketchup popsicle to a woman in white gloves, right? He was incredible salesman. He was incredibly charismatic, and caring, and he was great with words. He could talk the talk like nobody's business, but he couldn't live it. He couldn't walk the walk. And so he'd always try to teach me through his words. And so this letter that I got from him, if there's ever a like last letter that you want to get from a parent, like it was this letter. Um, but the last thing that he wrote in it was, to thine own self be true, which is just such a powerful, powerful statement. And there's a lot of different examples of that being said through history. Shakespeare used it. There's some origins at the Oracle of Delphi in ancient Greece, and it's know thyself. And I kind of took that to thine own self be true, and I kind of parsed it out into sort of two different thoughts. And one is know thyself, and the other is be true. At the time, in honor of my dad, I got these, I was running half marathons at the time. And so I got that tattooed on the backs of my legs that only I can see when I'm looking in the mirror for that matter. But, and I just, know thyself and be true. And so again, like that whole concept, uh, of awareness, of just becoming aware, because we are in a constant state of becoming, is so important to me. And so it's been a big part of my journey, as well as sort of looking at my own faults and flaws and programming. And shortly after that, I moved to Los Angeles, pursuing a career, in the arts. And I was going through this really tumultuous time post my dad passing, and the ending of the closing of a relationship, of a romantic, 6-year relationship that really kind of put me into a place where um I was really raw, really, really raw. And I remember just thinking to myself, okay, how do I want to go through this? Do I want to like numb through this, or do I want to like really feel my way through and come out the other end like in the way that I should, And so I remember getting into some group therapy. I remember getting into talk therapy, which I'm grateful. I had a session with my therapist yesterday. So going on 13 years now, I've been able to maintain a relationship with a therapist, which has just really been very meaningful to me. And being able to share that journey, because I know it's difficult for a lot of people, but I also don't often hear men talking about their
So
mental health
rare.
journey. And I think when we have healthier people in general, right? Our world is a better place. But I think it's especially on the group of folks that don't often talk about it, to say, okay, what's our responsibility here to one another?
Hmm. Wow. That is just unbelievably inspiring, as I have shared. So, all these years of working on yourself, getting to know yourself, trying to understand more and more about your behavior and how it affects others, can you share some of the aha moments and the benefits of that journey?
Oh man. I'll tell you, I do want to say one thing. It can be exhausting. It can be exhausting. I remember when I was like really in the thick of it. I was in LA, and I had moved back to my hometown after a stint in LA, and I was back living in Omaha with my aunt, who has been a big influence and impact on me in my life. And she's been sober ever since I was born. So we've always had really raw, honest conversations about stuff like this. And I remember at one point, I was like, I was analyzing, every decision and processing through all of these things, because my mind was like, it just like kicked open, it was like it cracked open finally. And I remember asking her time, I was like, is it gonna always feel like this? Like, am I always gonna be processing and judging and sort of analyzing every decision? She's like, no, it'll sort of balance out, after a certain point. And it absolutely has. But again, that journey is non-linear. And so, you take one step forward, or you sort of go on autopilot for a month or two, or a year or two, or a chapter, or whatever you want to call it, a season. So um the things that help me were, number one, were finding people that shared the same interests, that shared the same passion for growth and for honesty, and for healing. So I was fortunate enough at the time to find a 12-step program called Codependence Anonymous. A lot of times those were individuals that had been the children of an addict or something like that. Not that it's not a hard and fast rule by any means, but it's basically just a codependency on human relationships. And so being able to get into a group therapy session like that, where I didn't have to share if I didn't want to at first, so I was kind of just dipping my toes in it, but I realized I was very codependent, and that had influenced a lot of my interpersonal relationships. So that was a huge, huge, and the first one that I found was actually in LA. I was like in one of those places where I was like, I need something. I need to get this out, and I couldn't get a therapy appointment immediately. And so I was searching for Codependence Anonymous groups, and I found one. And it was my neighborhood, and it was like going to be in an hour or two. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And I was at this place where like I could feel every emotion that I had, like kind of bubbling through my chest, like and through my throat, like I was just so ready to sort of let loose. And I'm in this building, and the meeting is about to start, and someone comes up to me and they're like, "Hey, we are so glad that you're here, but this is a women's only meeting." And I didn't,
Oh,
and I was like, and I didn't want them to see me cry to like feel bad, that it was. And so I was like, oh no, yeah, no, that's okay. Yeah, no, thank you. And so I got in the car, and I just was like, like, and it just like, but it was so cathartic. Anyways, I ended up finding, an open meeting, a day or so later. and then continued that journey and actually continued that journey in 4 different cities I've lived in have been to codependence anonymous groups. And that's always just a great maintenance thing. And just to hear other people's journeys and sharing and stuff like that. But one of the things that also helped me at that time was finding mantras,
Right.
a short little phrase or word to sort of cling to in those times that was meaningful and particularly relevant to that phase of my journey. Because for me, it's like, it's so easy for me to just get on autopilot, and like not be intentional, and not be aware, right? It's so easy for us not to be aware. Our brains don't, our brains are, I always say this, our brains are wired for efficiency and not accuracy. So they're conserving energy, they're conserving storage space and all this stuff. So it's like, it's just so easy to operate out of our limbic system and not really be. And so I feel like when I have that mantra and I literally feel like I physically keep it in the front of my mind, right? That's a place for me, in a way, in an easy way, to just remind myself to get back into my present moment, my awareness. What am I doing? Why am I doing it? You
Mhm.
know, I don't know if any of that answers your question.
Oh, totally. So because I really wanted your journey to benefit our listeners with some little techniques, and the mantra is a powerful one. I have one. I typically use the same one over because I slip away from it. I keep coming back to it. But
Yeah.
you have another technique that I want you to share a little bit about, and I think we call it the pause, and it's powerful. So tell us about the.
Oh gosh. Yeah. Yeah. So with the Giant Five Voices program that I teach, there is this tool called the Know Yourself to Lead Yourself tool. And a couple of things about that tool I think are really cool. Number one is it's represented by an infinity symbol. And I say that because you never graduate from that school of self-awareness. And I believe that's so true because I think that we're in a constant state of becoming. And so in that, we're discovering ourselves, right? And like I'm glad that, at 25, I'm not the same person now that I was then. And I hope and pray that when I'm 50, I'll, not be the same person that I am at almost 40. And so again, we do continue to grow and change over time. And so, putting that pause is about what happens between that stimulus and then my reaction, or what I like to really say is my response to it.
Okay.
Because oftentimes we are just operating and we're just, popping off one after the other, and we're not putting that pause between stimulus or response. And so something happens to me and I'm operating out of my brain is using all this information from past experience. And unbeknownst to me, I'm making a decision. And so really just being able to literally physically put some space between whatever happens to me and how I choose intentionally to respond to it. There's a great quote in the book Man's Search for Meaning by the Austrian psychologist Viktor Frankl, who survived Auschwitz and the Holocaust. And he wrote this beautiful book about that journey and that experience and what that was. And it says, between stimulus and response, there is a pause. And in that pause lies our growth and our freedom. And that's how we're able to just create some space to say, okay, I'm going to choose something different. I don't want to keep going down the same hamster wheel.
Okay. So I am totally feeling your passion and energy. Will you repeat that one more time? The
The
quote.
whole thing.
The quote from
Oh,
Franklin.
yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Between stimulus and response, there is a pause. And in that pause lies our growth and our freedom.
I,
And when I
I,
think of that, when I think of growth, and particularly the word freedom, I'm honestly reminded by the Bob Marley quote, emancipate yourselves from mental slavery. None but ourselves can free our minds. And it's about how we are the ones that hold that key. We hold that key to our growth and our freedom, only us. And so to me, putting that pause, being intentional and not accidental, that's the journey. That's the hard part. It's worth it though. It's worth it every time. And so going back to that, is the unexamined life not worth living? You know, that's a tough question. I think each individual has to answer that for themselves. But I will flip it and say the examined life is definitely worth living.
oh, I love it. I love it. I want to ask you a question that aligns with this, and I think I know the answer deep down. Um, but I want to still put the question out there to you.
Yeah.
I hear a lot of people talk about self-love.
Hmm.
It seems to be like a very trendy
Treat
thing.
yourself.
Yeah. It makes me super uncomfortable. And
Okay.
um, I'm not proud of that, but it does because it makes me feel like self-centered. And
Oh, okay.
so talk to me about, with so much focus on personal growth,
Yeah.
how you see that as probably the antithesis of being self-centered.
Yeah. Well, I remember when I first started getting better, right, from my own sort of mental sickness, right? Um, Things felt different. And sometimes they felt bad just because they were different, but they weren't bad. They were actually healthy behaviors, right? Like one of the things that is difficult for me, but when I was able to do it in a really good way, it really did wonders in my life. And that was setting healthy boundaries. And setting healthy boundaries for a lot of people feels wrong,
Mhm.
but it's a really good thing. And so it can feel selfish. It can feel you maybe have to cut someone off or to put some space in a relationship, right? That's one of those things where that is self-love, but it feels really selfish. And to go back to your point about the sort of some of that self-talk, right? I've used some of those self-talk mantras, and sometimes some of those feel it's like that fake it till you make it. It's like, well, I don't really feel it, but I'm going to say it. Now it doesn't feel, now I feel like I'm being self-centered and I feel, whatever works for you. Like I would find mantras and I would have to tweak them because there were times where it was like, I'm loving, I love myself, I'm worthy of love, da da. Like, and sometimes repeating those over time was like it felt weird, it felt icky, it felt foreign, right? And so I would have to change them in a way like I am becoming loving, or I'm, you know what I mean, in a way that like my brain wouldn't try to reject it. And so it doesn't matter what words you use, just that you use them. If you continue to sort of look into what works for you.
Okay. And how has this work, Burke, um, how has it transformed to affect your life, your career, and your relationships?
I mean, I think in every positive way that I could think of, honestly. I mean, I'm so happily married. Um, it's improved my relationship with my wife in terms of also understanding what her experiences are like. What happens, and I say this a lot at workshops too, is that without being aware of it, we walk around and expect ourselves from other people. And that's what happens. And so when we do that, because we see things through such a subjective, tiny little fraction of a lens. I mean, the aperture is so small. We see just this tiny little fraction. And so to open our eyes to the experiences of others, first of all, is a growth journey in and of itself. I think to me, one of two of the most important characteristics to develop in life are awareness and open-mindedness. I think if we can stay malleable to life and our experiences, that's just a great journey and a practice. And so being able to do that and seeing what it's like to be on the other side of ourselves and what others are experiencing, because their reality is just as significant and true to them as ours is to us. And so that was a big eye opener for me. And then in terms of like my work, it's like I often people are often like after the one of the first times that I had sort of really gotten into facilitating a workshop and really in some of this work, I was like, oh my gosh, I feel like I've been preparing my whole life for this. I feel like I was built for this kind of work. My background in acting, my background in creating and entertaining for that matter, and then weaving in these other elements of awareness and psychological safety. uh those have been things that I've been excited about my whole life, and I'm being able to blend these two passions. And I love acting and I love filmmaking. I love getting to do theater, but this work is such a close second for me. People, and you mentioned, people get to see how passionate I am about it, and it's contagious because I can't help but share it because it excites me, because I want to share what I've learned and grown through. And I'm also by no means like enlightened or like at some place. I haven't arrived. We don't ever arrive. I
Right.
just want to share my journey of my stumbles, because I'm going to continue to stumble. And I'll
Mhm.
stumble on things that I've stumbled on for the last 20 years. But I hope to eliminate, you know, the impact of those stumbles, and again, to continue creating some space.
I love that. I want to touch on one thing you said, and then we have a few minutes left for maybe a question or two, because I've heard you say this before, and I look at both sides of this coin. You say, and I'm paraphrasing, that we tend to expect ourselves in others.
Yeah.
And I know that in my younger years, I would do exactly that. Like, why aren't these people, they're not working as hard as I am, rah, rah, rah. Never stopping to think about their journey. Well, I fortunately have certainly evolved from that, but sometimes I'll do the opposite. I'll expect from myself what I see in others. And I think that could be just potentially as harmful. And that's why this journey is so, so empowering to continue to learn and grow and be a better version of ourselves, as I like to say, so that you can be better for all the people that you love and care about, your career, your art, your relationships, which is why we're here today, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I think that's very true. And that's a great insight.
Mm. I do want to give a few moments to see if anyone would like to chime in or ask Burke a question. And I'm going to, how about while we're waiting for that, Burke, will you type your contact information into the chat? I would do it, but
Yeah.
I'm afraid I'll mess it up.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yes. Y'all, I have had a lot of fun with Burke in some workshops. And as I mentioned early on, if you didn't hear me say this, we did some workshops together in a very setting, mostly male dominated, military minded groups. And he kept referencing, he would sort of touch on therapy here and there. At one point, I just started calling him Therapy Boy, and he took, so I knew we were going to be friends forever. I just love that you have that ability to see humor and joy in all that we do. So, Ronald, it's so good to see you. Ronald is also an artist in Atlanta. So, talk to us.
Oh my gosh, what's going on?
Hey, Burke, that was great, man. I truly enjoy your presentation here. Just if you could really tell us an example of how when you pause and what happened in one particular instant that there was something where you pause, I mean, and then you create something, magnificent. I mean,
Yeah.
from the statement behind each pause, I mean, between stimulus and response, there's a pause, and in that pause lies your growth, where your growth exponentially in a case where you made a pause. I mean, it might be, I mean, I'm just checking out with your website here, and I'm saying, God, this guy's great. It's big. So, so I'm just like looking at, if you could, kind of pinpoint one of the cases where there was a pause that created something extraordinary.
Yeah, that's a really, so first of all, I have countless examples. So even like in my mind, it was like trying to figure out one. I mean, it's so often that we have those opportunities, you know. One that is honestly coming to mind right now is um when I'm in a place or I'm working with people, especially that I don't particularly know yet, I can have this tendency sometimes to minimize myself, to make myself smaller in order to make room for other people. And sometimes that can be a really good thing, that when I do that intentionally. But sometimes I can do it because I'm feeling inferior or I'm feeling a lack of self-confidence. And so there are times, and there was a time not that long ago, where I did that, and instead of making myself smaller and really kind of, I had a lot of self-doubt at the time, is what I was going through in that moment in my head. And so instead of doing that, I really paused to explain the situation matter-of-factly in my mind, to know that however someone else was responding to me was not anything that was meant to be taken personally. And so instead of doing that, I was able to just take a pause and realize that this other person is not trying to make me feel a certain way. They're just expressing how they feel and what's going on in their mind. And so in doing that, as opposed to just reacting and responding to their behavior, I was able to stand on my own 2 feet again and be myself and not mold myself to suit someone else in a way that was unhealthy. And so to me, when I do that, then I'm valuing myself, I'm valuing who I am, and they see that in turn as well. And it's not like a competition, it's not an unhealthy thing. I'm just saying I was able to do that in a very, very healthy way. And then that other person sees me doing that, that gives them permission to do the same thing. And then by doing that, I'm able to present my value, my true value, as confidently and healthily as I can. I don't know if that's a perfect example. I've got a few other ones if that didn't.
Yeah, I got it. Got it.
That's awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much. Sorrel, let's make time for one more question before we have to say goodbye.
Thank you, Tara. Thank you. Burke, I'm moved. I'm touched. I can't believe you're 25, if that's what you said.
Oh, no, I'm 38 now.
Okay. It's like, man, you must be like 200 years old. The wisdom pouring out of you is touching me that way. And it's exquisite to see someone at home. You are at home here, and I get the sense that you are everywhere.
Oh,
and
that means a lot.
And what made the K Advance group home for you?
Well, that's a really, really powerful question. Thank you. So I was really fortunate enough for my father-in-law, actually, who started K Advanced Group, to bring me into this work. And it was around a holiday in the very beginning of the pandemic that we got to talking, and he was talking about some of this work that he was doing and some of the books that he was reading. And I was like, oh, I studied organizational psychology. And he's like, oh, well, that's what I'm doing. And I was like, how did we just now figure this out? And so it was through the space that he created that really gave me a home at first. And he empowered me with support and challenge and opportunity to give me a home. And then from there, I'm molding it into the place that best suits me, but he really started that and gave me that home first.
Thank you.
I love that comment though. Thank you so much. That was so kind.
Y'all should, but Burke can truly light up a room. I mean, it's so genuine. It's such great energy. And he has the ability to not only light up the room with his words and his energy, but you can tell he's paying attention to the people in the room. So he's magical. We are at time. If you have any last words, lay it on us and then I'll close us out.
Oh, were you asking me or the group?
Yes, you're the
Oh,
guest.
I thought that.
Sorry, me, the communication expert, Burke.
No, I mean,
It's like
I'm resisting the temptation, like my father, to just try to teach the words. Oh, there's something I didn't say. Or there's the perfect quote that I could use, or I could pull from this thing. And honestly, reach out if you have any questions. Like, there's not something that's like I know I had plenty of time to talk. I appreciate it so much.
That's awesome. You were a fantastic guest, and I do hope you'll come back and just join us
Absolutely.
and come back as a guest.
Yes.
But right now, I'm going to close us out with our 7 tenets. And the first is to remember to lead with love. Keep love at the forefront of your life and give. Be generous, not only with what's in your pocketbook, but your time and your heart and your vulnerability. Be generous and give. And remember to laugh. Let your head go back. Let those endorphins fly. Remember to laugh out loud. It helps you to take care of your body, which means to get your sleep, eat more plants, and absolutely don't forget to move that body. It's the only one you have. Until next time, we'll see you all on the Daily Huddle. Thank you all.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Burke. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Catherine, Tara.